This book is essentially magic, and the Letting Go technique on page 19 is future technology. Everyone who does this technique consistently says it changed their life. But some people don't get to that point because they don't practice it correctly. So in this video, we're going to break down the nuances of how to do it correctly so you can use this technique and massively benefit from it for the rest of your life. So first off, when people start practicing the Letting Go technique, they're drawn to it because they're like, wow, I can let go of my triggers. I can feel so good. I can be happy all the time. But they're like, wait a second, why? I felt my negative emotion. Why am I still feeling it? Why is it coming back? I thought this was supposed to be the fix all. But you want to think of it like you have a tank of suppressed energy and emotion in your body that's stuck there from a lifetime of fear and difficult experiences that you've had as a human being. And by practicing the Letting Go technique, you're taking a chunk of that energy out of your body permanently, out of that tank of suppressed energy. And that tank will get smaller and smaller and lighter over time. But every time you practice the Letting Go technique, maybe you take out 0.1% or 0.5%, or maybe if you have a big upheaval of energy, it's like 3% of that tank. But if you're consistent with it over time, that tank will get smaller and smaller. And you'll notice that on a scale of 1 to 10, instead of something triggering you consistently at an 8 out of 10, after maybe 6 months of doing it, it'll be like a 3 out of 10. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this thing that used to trigger me like crazy just doesn't anymore. So you want to have that long-term mentality so that when you're practicing it, you don't get caught up in, why am I still feeling this? Another thing worth noting is, like he mentions in the book, some emotions are very intense, or like grief, it comes in waves, and you've got to ride those waves as they keep coming back over and over so that they don't get stuck in your system. It takes patience. You want to respond with your best judgment, go at your own pace. But then other emotions are small, and you feel them one time fully and they're gone completely. So it just depends. Now, if an emotion gets stuck, you want to surrender to the stuckness. A lot of the time people are like, oh, my emotion's stuck. It's just there. And they start freaking out and going back into resistance. So just release resistance to the fact that it's stuck. And that's when it will tend to move. Other times it will stay stuck, but you just allow it to be there. Maybe you have to distract yourself, go and do something for a few hours or a day, and then it'll tend to pass once you've really gotten back in that rhythm of not resisting it. Another hidden factor is sometimes when an emotion keeps coming back, there's an underlying hidden memory or belief or part of you that wants to speak and be heard and fully processed on a conscious and psychological level. So once you've done that a few times, you've done the Letting Go technique, you felt it through, and it's still there or it still keeps coming back, do some journaling or some therapy or some parts work to process that on a conscious level so that you can dissolve it fully and break that pattern. Okay, so a lot of the time we're judging our emotions, and that's why we can't feel them, because we're like, I'm a big, strong adult. I can't be feeling that stupid emotion. That's weak. But we want to understand that a lot of our emotional responses are stemming from our inner child response. The emotions that we felt when we were kids that we didn't fully process, and then they're coming back. They're triggering us because we never got a chance to safely hold space for them. So if we can start to conceptualize them as an inner child response, as just a part of us, then when it comes up, we can treat it like a crying child or an angry child, that part of us that needs to fully feel that and have it be processed, so we can stop and nurture and feel that, let it flow through the system, see it as just a part of us, so that that part of us that never got to fully do that finally can, and it doesn't have to stay stuck in our system anymore. And then that part of us and us, in turn, our bodies will feel lighter and better in the process, because we're not judging or suppressing based on what we think is in conflict with our adult identity. If something feels too intense or too big to deal with yourself, then honor that. Work with a coach or a therapist or a guide or someone who can help you go into that safely. But if something feels like it could be manageable, but it's just a little bit too intense, use EFT tapping, some guided videos, or use yoga. Use breath work, something to settle the nervous system down from like an 8 out of 10 down to a 5 or a 6. So that you can use that momentum from those other practices to dive into the Letting Go technique with the energy that remains from there, so that you can gradually allow the remainder to dissolve and bring it down to a level where you feel that peacefulness. But err on the side of caution with this. Don't dive into anything that's too intense. Make sure that you start small with smaller energies and emotions so that you build safety and confidence with the Letting Go technique, so that when you do build up to more medium and bigger emotions, you have that safety on a deep subconscious level with the technique. So this is really the key distinction to the technique, is ignoring the thoughts. And that might sound like suppression, but it's not, because you're not suppressing the energy. You're just ignoring the thoughts. You're not even trying to suppress them. You could just imagine like you're shuffling them to the background. They're not important for the sake of this technique. And that's super important to be clear on before you begin, because otherwise when you sit with your emotions, some really distracting or fearful thoughts will come up and you'll start to be like, oh, do I need to be thinking about this right now? Instead, you want to be super clear. It doesn't matter what the thoughts are. It doesn't matter how scary they are. They're just expressions of the emotion you're feeling in that moment, and you keep dropping past them again and again. And this is a time thing. It's like meditation, bringing your attention back to the breath over and over. Eventually, you start to find a rhythm. It's the same with the sensations in your body and your emotion. Your thoughts distract you, but you keep ignoring them, keep shuffling them to the background, however you want to think of it. No pun intended, and keep coming back to the sensations over and over until you start to feel that groundedness and safety and connection with what you're feeling, even if it's uncomfortable. And then you're in that energy. The thoughts are no longer important. You have a rhythm of attention on that energy. So often people get tripped up by this because they say, I can't ignore my thoughts, or they keep distracting me. They will at first. That's okay. Just keep bringing the attention back to the sensations, dropping into that, and you'll find that rhythm, that momentum, and you'll be able to use this technique successfully. So the second key to mastering this technique and getting all the benefits to it, besides ignoring the thoughts or shuffling them to the background, is to master non-resistance to what you're feeling. And the key here is to understand that resistance comes in layers. It's like layers of an onion. You want to drop down to the center, which is the surrender. But on the top layer, you have resistance to even letting the feeling come up. You're feeling some sticky emotion and you try to sit with it, but there's part of you that's trying to just keep it stuffed down. So you want to start with just not resisting the resistance. Like Hawkins says in the book, just allow that energy of resistance to be there for a moment. And eventually, after a few moments, it'll start to usually melt away and the feeling will start to rise up. And then you'll notice some resistance to that feeling, and you just want to relax and let that initial layer start to melt away. And then after a few moments, you'll notice there's still some part of you that's trying to control what you're feeling, or some thought that's trying to distract you because it doesn't think the energy's safe, or it fears that you're going to get stuck in it. And then you reassure yourself either by relaxing or speaking to your mind and saying it's okay to relax that resistance. It's okay to let this feeling be there. And then that layer melts away. And then you drop a little bit deeper, but then you'll still notice as you start getting closer to that center that there's still part of you that's like, I kind of want this feeling to be gone. And that's where the letting go technique is kind of a misnomer. It's more of starting with letting it be. You want to get to that final bottom layer where you're just okay with letting it be there. And you'll know when you're there. It's a very distinct sensation. You want to get familiar with how that feels to truly let go of resistance. That place of surrender is where you're okay with it being there and you're okay with it leaving. There's a sense of detachment. Like, oh, there's a sensation there. It's kind of uncomfortable, but it's fine. I'm just with it. I'm holding space for it. And that's where you're holding space for the crying child, and you're just loving the crying child while it's crying instead of trying to get it to change or stop crying. That's usually when the child stops crying, is when it really feels like you've held space for them. And you've loved them, even when they were sad or feeling whatever they were feeling. And so you're treating yourself the same way. That's when the energy really starts to lift and dissolve and evaporate, when you've befriended it, when you're not resisting it even a little bit. So remember, those resistance layers are layers. You want to drop through them over the course of time and conscious intention. And that's where you'll really start to notice progress and consistency with this technique. So what most people do is they only practice it when they feel a negative emotion. They only process their emotions or try to regulate their nervous system when they feel crappy. But that's a reactive strategy. If you want to be consistent, if you really want to feel good, if you really want to empty the tank, you want to take a proactive strategy as well. Do it reactively when it makes sense to do it. When you feel some type of way that you want to process, absolutely do it reactively, but also do it proactively. And my opinion is there's no better time than right now to just practice it while all these distinctions are fresh on your mind and you're embracing that nuance of the process. Go put that into action right now. Get that proactive rhythm going, that habit going. And then when you're done that, my suggestion is right now, write down how frequently you want to do it, whether it's every day or multiple times a week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, whatever you decide. Set a minimum goal for that emotional work. Specifically, the letting go technique is what I would suggest as a foundation. Put that into your calendar as a recurring reminder. Put it into your alarms as a recurring alarm so that you have accountability and you're consistent and you're proactive. Because like Hawkins says in the book, one of the best times to dip down into that well of suppressed crap is when you're feeling good, because it's easier to handle it, as opposed to when you're down in the dumps, you're less inclined to do it. But if you do it and you're in a rhythm when you're feeling good, you'll stay in the habit consistently, even in tough moments. So you'll have that consistency in your balance, in your mood, in your frame of mind overall, because the letting go technique goes straight to the heart of all the mind stuff. You're going straight to the energy behind that, shifting the energy so your mind follows suit. That's why it's future technology, because it's way more efficient than the paradigms that we're currently operating from around mental health and wellness. So practice that, schedule it in, hold yourself accountable, get all the benefits. And let me know if you have any further questions in the comments. I'd be happy to support.